So the first thing your instructor will tell you to do is get your seat in a nice comfortable position to reach all of the controls of the vehicle. The main thing is your feet. So I'm going to switch this little funky camera here so I can show you what I'm doing. But you want to make sure that you can push your clutch pedal all the way down and you don't feel like you're stretching for the pedal. Okay? It's a good idea to put your heel on the floor and push the pedal and make sure you're using all of that working travel. So all the way down to that point there. If the seat's too far back, what this can cause is for you to overstretch. So then you won't be able to get good pressure down on the clutch pedal, which is actually really vital for controlling the clutch. Once you've set your seat up, you're going to check that the head restraint is adjusted correctly to provide the best possible protection in the event of a crash. So the middle of your head, in line with your eyes and ears, is where the head restraint needs to be. Once you've done that, then we move on to the mirrors. Now the mirrors, it's important that we can see clearly out of the rear view mirror so we can see what's happening behind us. So if I put this up here, what you're trying to do is frame the window through there so that you can see nice and clearly in that rear view mirror. And then we have the door mirrors on either side, which we'll adjust to see down the side of the car. Again, I'll show you in this camera view, I can see down the road clearly and it's towards the center of the road. Okay, so that's the first thing. Your mirrors are really good because they show you what's happening behind you. But there is an area that your mirrors don't cover, and we call this the blind spot. So this is the area over our shoulders. So we have a blind spot over our right shoulder, which if I twist around is there, and the left shoulder, which if I twist around it is over to the left. Again, this camera will probably show you that a bit better. You can see the tree there and the road sign, and that is basically your blind spot. Now the problem with the blind spot is if you don't check the blind spot when you move off from the side of the road, there could be somebody coming off of a driveway or out of a junction or crossing the road. So when we think about our safety in moving off, we always think about our observations as part of that process. So the next thing is to understand the basic controls of the vehicle. So down here, we have my coffee, which is really important, but we have the handbrake. The handbrake works then by basically securing the rear wheels of the vehicle so that you can get out of the vehicle and leave it parked if you were going back into the house or going into the shops. So we pull this on by pressing the button in and lifting it up. To take the handbrake off, we have to do the same. So we push the button in and then we put the handbrake all the way down. Now we know the handbrake is all the way down because it reaches the bottom. And when we pull the handbrake up, we can push the button in and lift the handbrake up and then let go near the top. If the car starts to move, that means that you might not have pulled the handbrake on enough. So just think of it as like a tension when you pull, and then you know that you're holding the car in a nice secure position. Now, of course, we have the gear stick, which is this thing down here, and we'll come to that in a little second. And then under here we have the pedals, which we've already talked about. And it basically goes across. So it's accelerator, brake, and clutch. So people remember this by thinking A, B, C, but you can see how that's backwards. Now, the accelerator pedal, this controls how much gas is going to go into the engine. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. And then we have the brake pedal, which controls the brake pressure of the vehicle and stops the vehicle just like it would on a push bike. And then the clutch controls the connection from the engine to the wheels. Another noticeable thing or noted thing that we need to think about is our indicator, which is on the left hand side in this vehicle, and you can see the symbol there, which is the indicator symbol that lets you know that's how you would put your indicator on. So of course left would put the left indicator on and right would put the right indicator on. Okay, now I'm going to start the car up because for this bit we kind of want to see that. So let me just put the clutch down and press the start button, and we can tell the car is started up because you'll notice, clear all this off, the revs here have gone up. So when the engine is off, the revs are on 0. When the engine is on, the revs go up to the 1. So that's what we would call its idle speed. Now if I accelerate down here with this right foot, if I put a little bit of pressure on the acceleration pedal, what actually happens is the revs go up. So if I take the acceleration off, they come down. What you want to aim for when you're using the acceleration pedal is around the 2000 revs per minute. So we just squeeze very lightly on that to get it around 2000. And if you notice it's going a bit higher, you can of course ease off a little bit, but you want to aim for around 2000 revs. Okay, and on the left hand side here we have the miles per hour. So this is going to show us how fast we're going when we get moving. Okay, so that is that. Now the indicator, as I mentioned before, when we put that on, you'll see that we have the left indicator symbol come on here, and the right indicator would come on to the right. But of course I'm not going to put that on because we have vehicles approaching and there's a vehicle behind as well, so we would have confused them. So just think about your indicators is basically going to give information to vehicles around you. It's really important that we don't confuse other road users. So we've set our mirrors, we understand about these basic controls, and then we're going to think a little bit about the steering now. What most people don't realize is how much the steering wheel moves when they first start driving. So the steering wheel can go around one full turn, and then, as you can see there, like 3/4. So to come back to straight, obviously I can turn the wheel back, and then that is the wheel straight again. So when you're turning around a bend, just remember you can move your wheel quite a lot. So we use a method which we call push-pull, which basically means that we don't get in a muddle when we're steering. So the cockpit drill is done, and now we're moving on to the moving off part. Now we use a method called the POM routine to move off. This is preparation, which means setting the car up ready to go. Observations, which means looking around and making sure that we're not going to affect another road user and it is safe to move off. And then the move part, which is basically taking the handbrake off and moving the car down the road. It's important, we'll get the car moving, but we need to think about the stop as well. So this is where it's really important to understand how the clutch works. So I'm going to go through now how to use the clutch and a very loose idea about what it does at this stage. So think of the clutch as being a connection from the engine to the wheel. Currently the engine is running, and we can tell that it's running because on our rev counter we can see that the engine is at 1000 revs per minute. So think of this like two halves. You've got the engine and you've got a spindle and you've got a clutch plate. This is rotating 1000 times a minute, and that's what you can hear. Now on the other side of this equation we have another clutch plate, another spindle that is then attached to the wheel. So what the clutch is doing is controlling the connection from the engine to the wheel. So if we put the clutch down all the way, so let me show you here. So we put the clutch down all the way, and we're going to select gear 1. Gear 1 is always the gear that we start off in. We always set off in gear 1. So we're going to go over to the left and up to gear 1. Now at this moment in time, the clutch is now controlling the connection from the engine to the wheel. So as we start to lift the clutch up, and I usually tell my pupils, imagine you've trod on a tennis ball and you're starting to lift your foot off, and at the point you'd come off that tennis ball is roughly where your biting point usually is in most vehicles. So we're going to start lifting the clutch very slowly, and what we will notice is a slight change in the revs of the engine. As you could see on the rev counter there, the revs went up. If I drop it back down again, so I'm going to lift back up slowly now, and you can see that little bit of a rev there. And I'll show you what I'm doing with my foot at the same time. So I'm dipping down. So we're going to lift up slowly, and that is the point where those revs were kicking in. Now what I also feel is I feel a slight pivot in the car, and that's the car actually wanting to move. So if I show you this, if you look at a fixed point on the dashboard, I don't know if you'll see that, but you can see how the car is lifting slightly at the front. And this tells you that it wants to go. Now the only thing stopping it at this moment in time is the handbrake's on. So we've got a brake on basically that's resisting that movement. So a good way to do it is to visualize those clutch plates coming together and connecting. Now, as you're lifting the clutch up then, you're bringing the clutch plates together and you're finding what we call the biting point. So this is the car biting to move. It wants to go, basically. And we hold that point when we set off. Some instructors teach to put a little bit of gas on, but at this early stage, we're not going to use the gas pedal. We're just going to keep it nice and simple and stick with just the clutch alone. So we're going to set the biting point, and we're going to hold the biting point. So that is our preparation part of the POM routine completed. Now we're moving on to observations, which is our blind spot checks, our mirrors, and we're basically making sure that nothing is coming up or down the road. So as you can see here, it's clear in front of me, and if I look in the mirror, it's clear behind me. So now I can indicate, final check, and start to move off from the side of the road. Now at this moment in time, I'm not actually lifting my clutch anymore. I'm holding my clutch still, but eventually I'll lift my clutch all the way off when I've reached 5 miles an hour. Now to stop, I'm going to check the mirror, I'm going to indicate to the left, and I'm going to put the clutch all the way back down again, and then I'm going to press my brake really gently. And this will stop the vehicle at the side of the road. Now it's really important at this point that I keep my pedals fully down, because if I release my brake pedal, the car will of course roll. If I lift my clutch pedal up, then the car will want to move again. So it will cause the car to stall. So the next phase of this is what we call secure the vehicle. So we take the indicator off. As you can see, I've just pulled up. We're going to pull the handbrake back on. This allows us to release our brake pedal. Okay, now we can't release our clutch pedal yet. We need to take the car back into neutral. Neutral is the line down the middle there. So we need to come back into the middle, and we can tell we're in neutral because we can move the gear stick freely to the left and to the right. So one thing that's important to understand is that it's going to take a lot of practice to get good at this. You want to make sure that you're just going over the same motions over and over again. It's a bit repetitive at the beginning, but you're getting used to the car. You're getting that muscle memory on how high to lift the clutch, how hard to press the brake, and obviously if you're using acceleration, how much acceleration to apply as well. So keep practicing. We'll see you in the next video, which will be lesson 2, which will be more about the gears and turning. So I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.